Marissa stole all my stuff. I don't really have anything left to talk about. Okay, so before I begin, I need to begin with a short warning, two things I need to warn you about. First, there may be at least one instance of mild profanity. And second, there's going to be a quiz. It's not going to be a hard quiz, but I just thought I should let you in on what you're in for. As Marissa said, I'm going to talk about the eternal now. This is like a gimmick concept idea that we at Esquire magazine brought to fruition for the 1,000th issue of our magazine. That's 82 years for those who are counting. It's Esquire magazine. And this idea of the eternal now was kind of a long time in the making. I first semi-recognized that I was thinking about the past not too long after Apple launched the iTunes store. I remember that my daughters were in their early teens, and when iTunes launched, I was amazed and sort of had a little revelation at watching how they consumed things. I mean, they'd browse, they would sample, they would occasionally buy. But the thing that I noticed was that to them, it was all new. If they were listening to the Beatles, they had no awareness that it was something that had been created in 1966. It was entirely new to them. It was fresh. It was just part of the eternal now. So for the last year, leading up to the 1,000th issue, we've been building a complete digital archive of Esquire magazine. We timed it to launch at the same moment as the 1,000th. And that archive, which we call Esquire Classic, surfaces for the first time every story, every image, every ad, every cover created over the last 82 years. It's 250,000 pages. It's an awesome resource, and it's a living history of our country and our world told through the eyes of Esquire. So I've been thinking about the past a lot lately. Now, none of you know me, but if you did, you would know that one of the constants of my 18 years at Esquire magazine, that's 18 years, is that I have spurned the past. I have shunned it. I have rejected it. So it's odd to me that I'm here at John Maeda's request to talk about how the past is eternally present. When I got to Esquire in 1997, I inherited an office, and the main feature of this office, other than its size, was that it had a bookshelf behind my desk. On this bookshelf were bound volumes containing every issue of Esquire magazine. 65 years of the past was literally looming over me. I never looked at them. At first, I wasn't looking at them because I didn't want to be paralyzed or intimidated by what had come before me. But as time went on, I was supposed to switch to that eternally. But as time went on, I became convinced that the past was the enemy of future success. There have been numerous times in Esquire's life when it has been on the verge of dying, on the verge of extinction. And when it's been in those positions, it's been because either its staff took its existence for granted, or because they were trying to execute some formula that had worked at some point in the past. One Monday morning, a year or so into my tenure at Esquire, I came into work, and the bookshelves had given way. Hundreds of pounds of Esquires had tumbled onto the credenza and slammed onto the floor. History, it turns out, is a weighty thing, and the shelves could no longer hold them. I just left them there until maintenance came and carted them away. Another thing you would know about me, if you knew me, is that I just stinking love my medium. I truly believe that magazines are the most exciting medium ever created. But I took over in 1997. As the 90s came to an end, and as the aughts, and as the digital revolution in media hit its stride, that was not the conventional wisdom. The conventional wisdom said that all traditional media, books first, then newspapers, then magazines, and finally television, were going to be swept away by all these new forms of media. It seemed to me that the only way forward was to literally start over, reinvent my medium as some sort of attempt to stanch the digital onslaught. So what I did is what I always do when I'm kind of overwhelmed by the enormity of a challenge. And in this one summer, about 10 years ago, I called all my editors and writers together for dinner in New York, and I gave them a quiz. Here we go, props. I'm going to give you this quiz. You guys ready? Anybody ready? It's hard to see. Okay, so part one. What's this? That's correct. Good work. It's a bottle of ketchup. It's like the old style. This is the bottle of ketchup I had that night, like 10 years ago. So it's kind of brown and nasty in there, but it's like the old diner style bottle of ketchup. Got to do that to get it out. So if this is a bottle of ketchup, then what's this? Exactly. You guys are right with me. But it is a bottle of ketchup. But more importantly, it is also the greatest consumer product innovation of our time. It contains the same tasty and delicious content as the old bottle, but it's made to be a much more efficient delivery mechanism. And on many, bottles of its time, they would use the label for interesting purposes. They'd cross-promote. Don't forget the Ore-Ida potatoes. Or they'd tell you a little joke. So anyway, ketchup bottle. Part one. Thank you. Part two is, what's this? Magazine? It's a magazine, yeah, Esquire magazine. Happens to be the first issue of Esquire magazine published in the fall of 1933. A little torn up, still in pretty shape, magazine. So then I asked my staff, and this was the issue that was currently on the stand, so if this is a magazine, then what's this? Also a magazine, but more importantly, it's the same fucking thing. So now, I wasn't really trying to insult them or their efforts over the years that we've been working together, but what I was trying to convey was that it was incumbent upon us to take the things that make up a magazine, ink, paper, words, images, design, and find new ways to combine them so that we could maintain the standards and create the same level of excellence, but do it in completely new ways. And beyond that, we had to take advantage of what technology was just then starting to offer us. We had to make new technology serve the needs of an old medium. So we started actively messing with our magazine. I remember a day when I called in all our most important vendors. I had our ink supplier, our 2 paper suppliers, our printer, and it was like having the 5 families out of the Godfather movie in the same room. None of them wanted to talk to each other because they kind of competed, but I gave them the quiz, and then I asked them, what can I do that I've never done before with paper, with ink? And we literally started kind of messing around with magazines. We did a lot of little things, but one of my first things that was still one of my favorites is, I forgot about that. Okay, we ran an entire piece of fiction in the bottom margin of the magazine. So basically, you'd have the magazine, and you can get 7 to 10 words on a single page, 14 to 16 words on a spread. And in order to read the story, you had to flip through the magazine. A totally different way to experience the magazine, because what you were getting, in addition to reading the story, was this kind of peripheral preview of what was coming. It was almost like coming attractions. Totally new way to do things. We also started doing a little origami. So this was one instance. We had this cover, looks like a regular magazine cover after President Obama was elected, and we asked the question instead of hope, what now? And then we started to answer it on the inside. It had a little flap on the inside just for fun. Let's see, and then in 2008, I guess this was our 75th anniversary issue, we published the first cover of a magazine that moved. Words and images moved on the cover of a magazine. We found out about this company called E-Ink about 7 or 8 years before. They would eventually be the company that enabled Kindle by creating electronic paper. And we worked with them to embed a little E-Ink screen in the cover of the magazine. And I know on this screen, it doesn't look that impressive, but you saw 50 of these at a Barnes & Noble, and it was cool. There was something moving on a magazine cover. I saw 100,000 of them on newsstands around the country. It was kind of amazing. After that, we did, in advance of the coming of the iPad, we did an augmented reality issue in which we kind of did everything we eventually would do on the iPad. I was going to demo that, but it'll take too damn long. So shortly thereafter, the iPad was launched, and we were the first magazine to have a regularly published iPad edition. One of the things that we did that I thought was like the coolest innovation that everybody would start doing in the magazine business was creating a moving cover, like, instead of just like a stationary cover like on paper. We have a lot of actors on our cover, so I thought we would get them to act, and I thought everybody would start to do this. So we did this for like 3 years. Nobody ever did it. But I'm going to show you my favorite. At some point, we kind of got people to do little skits for us, and this was my favorite iPad cover.
Action on my own action? Take my own action? Is that what you want me to do, is take my own action? I wasn't ready. You have to say it again. There you go. Hey, I'm Justin Timberlake. Welcome to Esquire.
It always works. But after that, we kind of were emboldened, and we just started fucking around and playing around. Sorry, we started. Like, one of the things that we noticed that the web was really good at was disseminating things. It wasn't quite as good at creating interesting things, but it was good at disseminating things. And so we started making movie trailers for every issue of our magazine, and we would use the power of the internet to like spread the word, let people know what we were doing. I should give you one example.
I'm Robert Redford.
I'm Aaron Paul.
Brother Cornell West.
Dr. Dre.
Bradley Cooper.
Derek Jeter.
Robin Williams.
Brandon Knight.
Bill Murray. I'm 63 years old. What else you want to know?
The best day of my life.
Last Friday was pretty good, and there was nothing special about it.
I've had a lot of good days.
I'm looking forward to being a grandfather.
He told me to go into something that I love to do, not for the money.
Say again, please.
Keep loving, keep listening, keep fighting.
Okay, so how could you not go out and buy that magazine? Come on. So then we took it, this is still when I was rejecting the past out of hand. Then we took it to the next level, and 2 years ago, we helped create a television network on cable. It's in a mere 70 million homes. And even, just to be more ridiculous, we got into the liquor business, and we created a pre-made Manhattan cocktail. Greatest achievement of my career right here. My signature's on the bottle. It's awesome. I'm practically immortal. But then, as I probably should have expected, the past, that big pile of bound volumes, reared its head. After years of fleeing the past, I began to feel its pull. And it started on the 10th anniversary of September 11th. In 2003, we published a story by Tom Junot called The Falling Man, which was about this photograph. It was taken by AP photographer Richard Drew on September 11th. It appeared in the New York Times and many other papers on September 12th, and then it was banned. It was considered an obscenity, as though by looking at this picture, we were invading this person's privacy at the worst possible moment. Tom took that photo and turned the photo and the search for the man's identity into a memorial for everybody who died on that day. And just before the 10th anniversary, I noticed that every day, more people were coming to Esquire.com to read The Falling Man. First, it was tens of thousands, and then a couple days before the anniversary, there were hundreds of thousands of people, and they were staying. You could see they were staying for 20, 30 minutes. It's an 8,000-word story. On September 11th, 1 million people read the story, more than 1 million people. It has become the most read story in Esquire's history. And it occurred to me that, sort of like my daughters in the iTunes store, the readers who were coming to this story for the first time didn't know or care that it had been written 10 years earlier. On that day, at that moment, to them, it was new, and it was something they needed. To them, it was fresh, and it was a way for acknowledge the lasting emotions of that day. The second life of this story, as I said, made me think back to the iTunes revelation, and it kind of made me feel that the past could be present, and in some ways, we were living in this eternal now. And so here comes that pile of bound volumes of Esquire again. The pile that maintenance had picked up and locked in a closet, turned out to be a completely virgin, untapped trove. 50,000 stories, the vast majority of which had never been seen since original publication, and almost none of it had been digitized. We had a mountain of some of the most accomplished journalism, some of the greatest fiction, some truly stunning photography of all time. I mean, much of it was written or created by artists who require only a single name: Hemingway, Fitzgerald, Borges, Mailer, Roth, Steinem, Salinger, Efron, Foster Wallace, Woolf, King, Eggers. It was awesome. But the task that fell to us was finding ways to make that past present, to create a bridge from now to then. As I mentioned, we just recently published our 1,000th issue. And in order to create that bridge, to make the past constantly present, we worked with Shazam, which is, I think, the 4th most popular iPhone app or phone app in the United States, 140 million phones, to create a print-to-digital experience. At any point in the issue, when we refer to the past, and it's kind of about our history, so your phone can take you to that moment that we referred you to. Let me be clear. For example, when we reference Ernest Hemingway, Shazam the page, and you're taken to the issue in 1936 when Hemingway wrote his final story for Esquire, which happened to be The Snows of Kilimanjaro. But what this demonstrated to me was it's not simply enough to have an archive, a collection of back issues. That's the Shazam instructions. There are a few other magazines that have archives, but you can't just say, here, welcome. You have to constantly give people reasons to dig into it. So for the first time of any digital archive I know of, we curate it on a daily basis. We tie it to the news of the day. For instance, after the Democratic debates, the following day, we surfaced all the stories about the candidates who had participated in that debate that Esquire had published. We've also started doing outreach. Just 3 weeks ago, we launched a podcast series with PRX called Esquire Classic, in which we take a classic Esquire story and bring it to life. This week, we launched Nora Ephron's famous essay, A Few Words About Breasts. Our host is David Brancaccio. He has a professional actor reading sections from the story. And then we bring in a guest who is especially current. In this case, it was Jesse Klein, who's the head writer for one of sort of the most cutting-edge shows on Comedy Central, inside Amy Schumer. And I was going to play this thing for you, but I know I'm going to run out of time. So I'm not. No, I can't, John. Really? You sure? Wait, do you want this or you want George Clooney? Okay. All right. So anyway, the podcast is up, Esquire Classic, on your podcast app or anywhere else. Esquire Classic, listen to it, A Few Words About Breasts. Also, there's a fantastic podcast on there based on The Falling Man. So, as I promised, I'll leave you with George Clooney. In the same way that 10 years ago, I asked my writers and editors and everybody at Esquire to kind of break the magazine down into its component parts and reassemble it, we're trying to do that with our past. For virtually every issue since I've been at Esquire, we've done a feature that we call What I've Learned, where we go to a person who's lived an extraordinary life and try to suck their wisdom out of them. Sometimes the interviews take an hour, sometimes it takes 17 hours. But we present it on a single page, just a photograph and their words. What we discovered as we started thinking about how do we use this, how do we surface it, was we had more than just words on paper. When we looked into it, we found that we had audio of virtually every one of the hundreds of interviews that we've done. It was raw audio, completely unedited, but some of it was extraordinary. So what we did was earlier this year, we worked with Medium. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with it, the storytelling platform. And we created a microsite on Medium on which we recreated 15 of these old What I've Learned. And the way we recreated them was we took the audio, edited it into potent little nuggets, and then we animated them. So, of course, my favorite, and he's been on my cover, I think 6 times, was George Clooney. And so I thought I'd just let you see this little animation. It's not that long, but I hope it sounds good. Oh, that was What I Learned.
All right, ready?
I'm ready.
We guys ready?
Yep, we're good.
I was a happy kid. I had a great growing up. Funny parents. My mom and dad both very funny. And it was part of our family business that you had to be able to tell a story. My uncle Uncle George was a B-17 bomber pilot. Did some 20-some sorties over Germany, in 1944, like the real deal. Uncle Chick, who was in the Army, but he was never in combat at all. He lost a finger from some accident. He had a glass eye because he'd gotten meningitis when he was a kid. He didn't have his teeth, he had dentures. And I was about 5, and my sister was about 6. And my Uncle George would go, Chick, come here. He really sounded a lot like Al Pacino in Scent of a Woman. He would get drunk and go, I killed more people with a touch of my thumb than you ever want to look upon to add to your collection. And my Uncle George would go, Chick, you live a hard life. Chick, take off your finger. And like Uncle Chick would do some sort of move like that, and you could see he was missing his finger, and we could feel it. Now, Chick, take out your teeth, put them on the table there for. And he'd take his dentures out and stick them on the table, and we're like, he'd go, now, Chick, take out your eye, lay it on the table there. Uncle Chick would take this glass eye out and stick it on the table. My sister and I would be staring at it, petrified. And then Uncle George would go, now, Chick, unscrew your head. We would just run out of the room. To this day, I'm convinced that Uncle Chick could actually unscrew his head, too. I'm pretty sure of it.
That's pretty good. So, as you can see, I've made an accommodation with the past. I'm more or less okay with it now, especially now that I can see that unlocking the past is as creative an act and often as subversive an act as creating something from whole cloth. The past is present. We live in hybrid times. We live in the eternal now. And that's all I got.
Thank you for saying that.